Absolutely. The natives are getting a little restless on the basketball side of things with the portal action kind of coming and going. They landed Khalil Ware early on to replace Trace Jackson Davis, but the most glaring need and that was wanting and needed to be filled seemed to be wings and shooters. And not question, it is question to you, but not that you were there. But the need was so great. I wonder, why did they focus so hard on so few guys? And then it's like they put all their eggs in one basket, and those eggs got broken.
Yeah, they certainly did not. Things did not go as planned. It would seem, and I imagine you asked the question. Uh, they probably had a pretty high degree of confidence that things were going to break a different way. But as is often the case in recruiting, until that signature's in hand, and now, until that commit, that recruit is on campus, everything's in flux until the ink dries on that paper. So, unfortunate that they weren't able to seize that momentum. And I don't think they're done just yet. I don't think the portal's done just yet. But it certainly is a little concerning considering the both the number of needs and the significance of those needs in those positions as far as roster composition that Indiana finds itself, coming towards the close of April with a lot of question marks still lingering. And I imagine you're probably still going to see some additions down the road. I don't know that you see all 13 remaining scholarships filled, but there's currently 3 open right now. And I imagine at this point they're probably scrambling, trying to figure out what the path forward looks like, because this is the 3-dimensional chess, if you will. It's not just getting a competitive roster together for next year, but you're building for the 24-25 class and on down the line. And all those concerns are things that are going to be considered by all the kids you're recruiting in subsequent classes. So a lot of question marks remain right now as it seems like the staff has shifted a lot of its focus to the coming classes. Part of that, I think, is just a product of the recruiting window. Dead period just ended. Spring session's back in right now. But it's going to, as we said before, it will continue to be an interesting off season. But I think what you see is an increasing shift in the significance now, with less portal options being available, or at least apparent. Player development. It's going to absolutely come down to what can you make of the guys that you got, and that's probably going to be where a lot of the efforts going forward are focused as it relates to next season's roster, because you've got some intriguing talent. It's just a matter of getting the chemistry right, getting the guys in position where they can succeed at this level, and it's tough because you look at guys, the incoming freshmen like Newton and Cups. Both of those guys, pretty talented dudes in their own right. Obviously, Newton coming off the injury, so a lot of question marks over his fitness upon return. I think most people have seen Gabe Cups, recognize he's a special talent. But then the question remains: how does that talent translate at this level, both Division I as well as high-level Power 5 basketball in the Big Ten? And that's a steep learning curve for these guys. That's a tough hill to ascend in a short period of time. So hugely important that they get on campus and they find a groove with their teammates, because everybody that remains at this point, we've seen Mike Woodson runs a fairly tight rotation. Imagine that opens up a little bit with less apparent starters, at least right now. So early season, there's going to be a ton of opportunity for guys that are able to prove they're worthy of it.
And it also brings up a question that fans, all the time are talking about Woodson's recruiting ability, blah, blah, blah. But it does, because of his lack of experience as a college basketball recruiter, it does bring into question, what is his recruiting strategy? Because not only is college recruiting way different, it has changed massively in 2 years. Now, I think it's made it easier for someone who had not been a recruiter before, but it also it's also made it maybe.
Hey, sorry about that. I'm
energy.
having some connection issues today.
That's all right. I was just talking about.
No, I don't know. I don't know that there is a clear answer to the questions as far as what's going on with it. What are the the ceiling and the floor, if you will, for this recruiting?
What's the strategy? I think is the question. What are they? I don't know that. I look at someone like Eric Musselman. They're it's high energy type of people. I wonder, does energy matter? But something is. I don't know what the difference maker is for these kids, but something is.
It's fascinating because reports just come out this week showing the top NIL earners from last season, and particularly the what was earned in March. And you look at Indiana's performance in that sector. Men and women accounted for 25% of the top 20 or top 10 earners in both men's and women's. So clearly they're actively and effectively participating in that space. But perhaps that dispels some of the notions that this is strictly a contract war when it comes to how do you lure and attract players in the portal through the NIL efforts. It's certainly something that Indiana has. I think it's certainly something that they've been able to leverage. But I think maybe you take a step back and do a postmortem here on some of these recruitments, and you got to accept that sometimes it's a lot more complicated than just a dollar amount for some of these kids. Obviously they're all looking to make the leap to the next level, but as we mentioned before, they're looking for the right fit for them. And portal guys aren't new to any of these matters. They've been there before. They've been around this block a couple of times, and probably a little more strategic in their selections. So I imagine it's going to be an evolving process for staffs across the country, figuring out where the misses were, where the opportunities were, where they can better succeed. And like I said, I don't know that they're necessarily done yet, so I don't know that it's necessarily fair to give them a final grade on it. But I think it's certainly safe to say that it has been a little underwhelming, considering some of the expectations, but especially considering the pretty dramatic and obvious needs.
And there's no doubt that Indiana has to and needs to count on C.J. Gunn, Caleb Banks. Those guys have to make jumps. I think Caleb played well last year, and C.J. Just go through a lot of the normal freshman type deals, but both have a high ceiling. C.J. Gunn, that dude can shoot the ball. You have to work. You have to think back. Victor Oladipo was not a good shooter when he arrived at Indiana. He was not the number 2 pick in the NBA as a freshman. He had to work on that. The difference between his freshman year and his into his junior year was massive.
No doubt whatsoever. And, that kind of harkens back to that whole comment about the importance of development. Indiana has done, relatively well there. In its ability to shape the bodies, to develop the athletes. Race Thompson goes out to Portsmouth and puts up some speed times that would have led the NBA combine in full court sprint. There's clearly an emphasis right now across the country on the physical development of these guys. It's probably going to have some of the greatest emphasis this offseason because you're going to have to get so many younger bodies up to speed and ready to go at this level of competition. And I think Caleb Banks and CJ Gunn are probably prime examples of that. Guys who have a lot of raw talent, but it really needs to be honed in and sharpened. But you look at the defensive end and how lateral speed, lower body strength are going to be so critically important. And what was the difference in the defense this year versus the year prior? Because with less offensive prowess, I think you're going to see Woodson probably dig in a little deeper on that end. So focusing on those skills, those attributes, they're going to make them more capable defensively, are going to go a long way. In addition to plugging some of these roster holes for them.